He's a bad mama jammer, the finest QB he can be. I said Burrow's a bad mama jammer, the finest QB that could be. His QB rating was 108.3 in 2021. You gotta Google it to see. His poetry in motion and his audibles are edible to me. I get so excited viewing his anatomy. He's built his
All right. Welcome to the number one Bengals podcast. That is Dr. Hoji Lekrikus Moji with the introduction music, talking about Joe Burrow and John. I'm joined by the great John Sheeran of A to Z Sports. John, what is your reaction to those clips that you saw at the camp? Yeah.
Of all the stats you wanted to put in, the passer rating from 2021 was an interesting. It's a good one, right? It's 108. It's pretty high. What anatomy is he talking about that he likes looking at?
I think it is. Well, we can't say that's on the show. We won't be able to monetize, but it is. But yeah, it is. Here's the thing, John. Joe Burrow. A lot of people have been saying he looks as good as he ever has. The wrist looks fine. T. Higgins, he has a little hop in his step. Wouldn't you say? He looks like he's really playing with some extra burst this year. Looking good.
I think he's focused, I think the whole reason why he signed the tag is to have this exact training camp. He's getting all the reps with Jamar Chase out, so he's being the X. He's like off the line, so he's in these different alignments. And like, I don't think he and Burrow have disconnected ever since like maybe the first couple of practices or anything. So
exactly.
Honestly, I mean, he's better than any of the cornerbacks that the Bengals have. No offense to either Cam Taylor-Britt or DJ Turner, but he's T. Higgins. He's better.
He's just so hard to match up against because of his size. And really, when he is feeling good, when his body's feeling good, he can get down the field as well. And we've seen a lot of bombs from Burrow to T. Higgins this camp. But unfortunately, John, Charlie Jones, he suffered an injury. He had an MRI. He said we'll know more later, which probably means he's out for at least one season, maybe 2 or 3. And then, when his rookie contract is up, obviously, who knows? This could be the end of his career. John.
I mean, that was the fear, right? I mean, the guy is like a really old player for being really young in the league. So he's like 25. I think he's turning 26 this year. If he were to miss this season, hypothetically, he'd be like a 27-year-old with little to no experience. He'd be like the wide receiver Marcus Hunt. That was the fear when he was carted off, and people seemed really concerned, and he wasn't putting a lot of weight on whatever leg that he ended up hurting. Indications, though, is like it potentially might not be that serious. He was kind of walking around the locker room. The vibes are relatively good. He had the MRI, so we didn't know for sure. But I think if it was as serious of an injury as I think a lot of people feared, the vibes would have been a little bit lower. I don't know. A lot of speculation, a lot of conjecture. Andre Yoshivas told reporters that what he thought he saw was that he just banged knees with someone at the catch point, and it might just be a contusion. But we'll learn more. I don't think he'll play Saturday, but I don't think at this point I'm not sure it's like a season-ending injury either.
Yeah, well, it depends on who he banged knees with. I mean, you said the catch point, so it probably wasn't Amarius Mims. But if it was, I would imagine his knee would explode into a million pieces. Because that guy at camp, John, players have been saying he is so big. T. Higgins was saying this guy is he's big as hell. And hell, as you know, is unlimited in its size, John. And hell is a fiery pit of pain. And here's the thing. They're saying Amarius Mims is like hell in his size. That is scary. I mean, think about that. If you're a defense and you're facing hell, the size of hell.
With much better temperament than Satan himself, but it must be
That's
hell.
true.
Yeah.
He's a very sweet guy. That's what Bridget was saying. He's a very sweet guy, yeah.
It must be hell trying to get around him, though, because
I think so.
Like Miles Murphy, he's been going up against Amarius Mims for most of camp, and Murphy's whole game is that he's really explosive. He's 6'5", 270, so he converts a lot of that explosion and speed into power. You can displace guys. You can push guys back a little bit in their set. And Amarius Mims, in all 6'8", 350 pounds, he just absorbs all that power, and he doesn't move. And he's nimble enough to stay balanced through all that and redirect Murphy. And I think Murphy's got him a couple times because Murphy is also really quick off the edge, and Mims is still kind of getting his feet wet. He's still young. But it's tough when you have someone as big as Amarius Mims, well, is also as quick. So you combine that force with agility, and it's really hard to find a plan of how to get around him or get through him.
Really. And the thing with him was the injury concerns, and we haven't seen any of that so far. But John, overall, the offense is killing the defense. You could say it's really doing well. It's that offensive line. You know, we said Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones was supposed to be the Tyler Boyd replacement, but it turned out Yoshi was more of a contributor in his rookie year, and now Jermaine Burton. And they're kind of a stacked. I mean, not superstar-wise, but behind T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I'm saying after those two, they're kind of a stacked at the third option, right? They have a lot of guys that are pretty good. And then you have the blocking up front, and you have the running backs looking really good. Chase Brown is taking a big step forward with his route running, like Zach Taylor said. The offense is doing really well, John. And supposedly, there's been a little bit of friction between the offense and the defense. The defense is firing back, and we saw this fight. Everybody saw this fight, John. Okay, so here's the thing. We see that, John. We think typical training camp. It's really hot in August. These guys are fired up. They're ready for the season. They haven't played anybody but themselves for a while. No big deal, right? And Dan Pitcher came out and he kind of said that. He said, look, these guys are being competitive. They're, what did he say? You know, he said it's their edge, all that kind of stuff, right? Seems to fit the narrative of a typical NFL training camp. However, John, look at what Ted Karras said.
What happened out there, and how do you explain the intensity?
Well, I think that we've had a lot of good back and forth. Intense training camp going on 3 weeks now together. They were tackling our guys in thuds, so it's not allowed.
What did you have? How did you and Logan get into it? What happened there?
Well, it was a play on the sideline, probably overly finished. He didn't like that, and I didn't care.
John, first of all, I want to clarify something. Did he say thugs? What was what he said?
He said duds with a D.
Oh, I thought he was gonna say they're thugs, but some of them are good people, and I thought it was like a whole other thing where he was trying to scare people about the defense. Okay, thugs makes a lot more sense. But John, he's not happy with the way they're playing the offense, and right?
Is that what you took from that?
Yeah.
I think it was just the rep that kind of went a little bit wrong. I mean,
No, he talked about the fact that they hit Yoshi. They hit him late on one play. Jermaine Pratt. Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Pratt one it might have been after that. There was like multiple. There was like 4 kerfuffles, if you will. On that one, I think Logan Wilson just took exception to Ted Karras finishing him to the ground. I think there is a sense of, obviously, you're pent up and you want to hit someone and you're tired of facing the same guys and you have to hold back and whatnot. And I think Ted kind of thought that in his mind when he blocked Logan Wilson to the ground. I understand why Wilson was a little upset by getting taken to the ground by your own teammate, even if it is that point in camp. And that's just what happens when tempers flare. Families fight, friends fight. It's just part of it.
John, it's true, but I've never been pushed by someone that large in my family, that hard.
Didn't say all fights were the same.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're right, John. I hope you're right, because
are you trying to stir up some chemistry issues?
No, I'm not. But Karras really seemed angry. He really seemed upset with the defense. He really did.
Yeah, I think there was just a handful of instances where the defense was just trying to push a little bit harder than they should. And I think that the statement and the message that Zach and the coaching staff made was that, hey, this is part of it. You know, we're trying to gain a physical edge, a mental edge into the season, but we got to protect ourselves. And
I'm just saying, John.
There's a line that needs to be towed there with the defense, yes.
I get it. But when Pitcher comes out, he says, look, it's just competitive. It's the edge. It's this and that. Well, Brian Callahan was the guy, was like the player's guy. Right, he was the intermediary between Zach and the players, and they loved him on the offense. And now this pitcher guy comes in. I don't know. Maybe he's a little extremist. Maybe he's
extremist. How?
You know, he's calling for violence.
No,
I don't know, John. No,
he's been there the entire time.
Okay.
Like, it's not like he came out of nowhere.
I see. Okay, well then we don't really have a lot of news. Then that's my problem. That was the biggest news that we had this week. Okay, well,
the game actually.
There is a game. I don't want to talk about that. Yes.
Why not?
Why not talk about the game? So the Cincinnati Bengals are going to play their starters in the first game of the preseason. John, that is unheard of. To like Joe Burrow, we didn't even think he'd play in the preseason. Now he's playing in the first game. And historically, it's the third game, I want to say. The third game where the starters play the most. If you go way back to the 90s, they used to play a little bit, like in the first or second game, a little bit. But I think they're not looking at it from the strategic standpoint of seeing where they measure up against other teams so much as like, let's just get some real action. Let's get some refs blowing whistles and stuff.
Well, if the entire city is clamoring for this team to not start 0-2 for like the third consecutive year, you want to get the real life reps under your belt before you're actually out there in week one. I think it was Burrow who basically said it best, like just being out there on the field, learning through the mistakes that you make in games that ultimately don't matter is much better than learning on the fly and having to make these adjustments and having to go through this stuff when the games do count towards you making the playoffs or not. So no, it's not a matter of, I mean, there is obviously always going to be an element of how you look against another team that isn't going up against you every day in practice, and that's part of it. But I think it's also just going through the process of being in the huddle, getting the calls onto the field, executing them. Even if the drive doesn't go as planned, you want to get those reps so that you have something to learn from going into practice the next week and then the next month going into it.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we looking for, John? Position battle-wise. Marius Mims, a lot of people saying maybe he takes the spot from Trent Brown. Are we going to see him a start? What do we see the running back situation? How are those carries divided up? Receiver, who's the number 3? Are these the things that we're looking for, John?
Yeah, let's go in that order then. I think Mims is going to start at right tackle just because he's taken every single rep since the beginning of camp. Trent Brown, we forgot to mention, is back at practice. He's going through the drills and whatnot, but it, like that, his whole ramp up is going to be different because he's played 1,000 games. He doesn't really need to practice as much as Mims, so he could still start week 1, but Mims is going to start this game, and he might be out there the longest out of anyone who starts the first snap just because he's a rookie and he needs a lot of snaps. You're talking about wide receiver 3. It's probably going to be Trent and Irwin, but I would imagine Yoshi to be rotated in there pretty frequently and early. Maybe he gets the second drive if the ones are still out there. I don't really know how that's going to work out, but if I had to guess, it would probably be Irwin. Matchup doesn't like maybe
he's
some,
a safe
maybe in some matchups you want Yoshi out there, but I think if it's just like if I just had to guess, regardless of who they're playing, it would probably be Irwin. But obviously Chase is not going to be out there, right? So it could just be both of them, right? I think Irwin on the outside with Higgins and then Yoshi in the slot, or you can interchange Yoshi and Irwin in that case. Punter is another battle. It's probably the most wide open battle, right? They had 3 punters on the roster, which has never been seen before. Then they waived one of the rookies, and they kept one of the rookies. They kept the rookie that they just signed 2 weeks ago, so he supplanted the other rookie that only was here for 3 months. And now he's going to be battling with Brad Robbins, and we kind of seen that for the past couple of years. They've interchanged 2 punters throughout the preseasons in like 2022 and 2023, so there'll be equal reps for them as well.
Yeah, I hope they can resolve the punter issue like they did the Evan McPherson one. They got this Evan McPherson guy. They drafted him, 4th, 5th round. It was totally worth it. By the way, John, now McPherson up for a new contract. We saw Harrison Butker get the largest kicking contract ever. And, you have to think. A lot of it's because he's been able to focus on his career so much, not worry about a lot of the family issues.
Now he can provide with that contract,
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't have to worry about all the hassle of the family, kind of the housework and so forth. And you see the results. He's getting the biggest contract ever. But, John, here's the thing. We have this game coming up. Okay, great. But then we're going to have another 3 weeks to the season. I don't know what they're going to do in between then to stay ready. But the thing is this. This season, Warren Sharp was pointing out, John, I'll just put up the stats here. He's saying that last year the Bengals had the toughest schedule in NFL history. He said at least since 2000, but that's only because the internet doesn't go back beyond 2000. And he said that 11 games against playoff teams, the most in the NFL since at least 2000. 14 games versus teams over 500, which is the most since at least 2000. And Burrow only played 5 games healthy, which is something that our good friend Zim has pointed out. Like, really, how did we win 9 games and almost make the playoffs? Amazing. But he says this year they have one of the easiest schedules, the 6th easiest schedule. However, They are one of the few teams that has 3 games in 10 days, weeks 14 through 16. Plus, they have 3 short weeks. Sorry, they play 3 teams. No, wait. No, they have 3 short weeks. Plus, they play the Cowboys and the Chiefs on the road after they have mini buys, which means they play Thursday, so they have 10 days off. The Bengals play them following both of those. It seems like a setup. It seems, again, like the NFL is like, yeah, you'd miss the playoffs, so we technically have to give you an easier schedule, but here's the catch, because we don't want to see you late in the postseason again.
I think projecting schedule strength is always a mixed bag.
I
think
agree.
You have to do it by how teams are projected to do, not how they were last year.
That's
because last year's schedule wasn't supposed to be as tough until every single team in the AFC North finished above 500, and 3 of the teams made to the playoffs. So that's 6 games right there.
But you agree
that's
teams.
I
because
it's
they're wrong. The AFC North is always outperforming.
Well, sure. Like the AFC North is consistently good, which is why if I hear the Bengals have the 6th easiest schedule, is that just factoring in the AFC North and they play a bunch of scrubs outside of that? I don't know if that's particularly true. I think it's going to be a middle of the road schedule, if you will. But yeah, the lack of rest can kind of hurt, and I think that's unfortunate now that you have 17 games and only 1 bye week. You're going to have some stretches in the year, especially late in the year when you're not going to have as much rest and you're going to be traveling. There are other teams that got screwed in these situations, but I think the Bengals and Cowboys specifically are getting like the raw end of the stick here.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, John. Are we worried though when we say the short weeks? Are we worried about the Joe Burrow wrist that he would have to sit out a game?
I'm glad you brought that up actually, because
can I say the faux wrist?
Yeah, there's been like I think 11 training camp practices. I want to say it's either 11 or 12. I think Burrow's only been limited in maybe 2.
What does that mean, limited?
Either he hasn't thrown or he's barely thrown.
Is that did he have to, or is it precautionary?
No, precautionary. Like that was my biggest question entering training camp, because he was taking rest days in OTAs and mini camp. I was wondering if that was going to translate in training camp, if they were going to continue to be, cautionary with him. Yeah. And doesn't seem like that's been the case ever since maybe like the 3rd practice. I think he's been out there pretty much every other day or every single day, and he's looked fine. So maybe that's just them monitoring the situation and realizing that, okay, he's fine enough to do this, and he doesn't like everything is all good. They don't need to take these precautions. I'm just a little surprised about that. So if that's what it is now, I would imagine, when the season's going on, and he's got more reps and he's gotten more strength back in it, maybe we don't see those.
John, here's the counterpoint. In those practices, he's never going to have to throw 50, 55 times.
Sure.
But in the games, so in the games, it comes up, they're behind, it's Monday night, it's whatever, it's a big game. Zach Taylor is like, what do I do? It's like they used to do with Dan Marino. It's like, no, we're going to run the ball. But then when it comes to primetime and they need to win, they're like, go throw it 50 times, Dan. That's what they do to Joe Burrow. Let's be honest. I mean, Dan Pitcher hopefully is different. He puts him on, no pun intended, but a pitch count. That's what I'm hoping for, John. I thought you would like that one. I thought you like puns. I'm surprised you didn't like
You're always got a pun up your sleeve. It doesn't surprise me at this point. I'm just surprised at this point, when there's no game imminent, that they weren't at least giving him a little bit more rest, because there's no complete rush to be 100% ready. Like during the season, those rest days, like they're right next to game days and whatnot. But obviously, veterans get days off on Wednesdays or Fridays all the time, and it doesn't really seem to affect them. So maybe that will be the case with Burrow for sure.
All right, Jan. I like the optimism. I really do, and I hope that Burrow's faux wrist, as they're calling it, the kids are calling it, I hope that it holds up the entire season. But I'll tell you what will hold up the entire season is this show, because it is back.
Maybe.
This show is back. Yeah, maybe this show is going to be back, and every week, and we're going to have John, who you can find at a2zsports.com/Cincinnati. We're going to have Bridget. We are going to have Bridget, believe me. And we're going to have Dr. Hoji, who you can hear here on the guitar. He played the intro. We didn't have him on the actual show today, but we should very soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a 5-star review everywhere that you can find reviews. And we'll see you next time. So long, Sweetie Pies.